What's good, YouTube? Cardfight King here, Aqua Life baby. You already know how it is. Um, so as promised, I wanted to bring you guys my Deletor deck profile. Uh, I do have a bit to say about the deck, but I'm gonna get into that. At the end of the deck profile, just a little bit of my thoughts and experiences playing the deck since its inception. But as usual, I'm gonna explain the cards as we go along. So, let's get into it. All right, so first card is Micro Hole Draco Kid. I it's a starter. Who cares? It's all the same. Draw one. 4 heal, um, 6 draws, and 6 crits. Reason why I'm doing 6/6 is because the deck has a problem with basically building up hand, especially if since we're using Given in the deck and he does force you to discard 6. We want to just have more opportunities to hit draw triggers to build up a line, and the draw trigger can come in handy as well because if your opponent does happen to just, remain having a deleted Vanguard on offense, the draw trigger at least hits if you're struggling with rear guards. At the same time, a draw trigger can come in handy for, a 5K block if you so need it. So, all in all, 6 and 6. I feel like this is this is like, a better lineup for deleters from my play testing. So, there's that. um, Not much there. So for grade ones are an interesting bunch. For drown basically goes. When he's on the field and he sees your opponent's Vanguard get deleted, he can go into the soul and you banish delete one of their rear guards. So you choose one of the rear guards, bind it face down, and if you have no counterblast after you did that, then you get to countercharge one. So definitely a much needed card in this deck, which does have can have a resource problem. Opener of the Dark Gates, run 4. This deck needs to build up a field. This deck definitely needs to see some units on the board as well. Opener of Dark Gates, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, you can Soul Blast 1, check the top 2, call one of them out, send the other one to the bottom. This card is good and bad. Good because it gets you cards to board. Bad because this deck doesn't shuffle. And there's one time in tournament where I grabbed a double greed hole or a heal trigger and a draw. So it's really random, but it's all for the sake of putting out board. And really just depending on what you see, you can determine whether this was a good play or not, but you're leaving it off the chance, so you're assuming the risk of not seeing 2 grade 3s, your 2 of your main boss grade 3s for the rest of the game, or 2 heal triggers for the rest of the game, unless there's something that happens during the game which causes you to shuffle your deck. So there is that. But I do like to play her turn 2 if I'm trying to get in a little rush, or if I'm really struggling for rear guards. And I'm able to, and I do have, control of the board. My opponent doesn't have a board, then, she comes into play. 3, Greyon. I don't like this card too much, but it's okay. It's another card that allows for some board control at the end of the battle that attack the Vanguard. So he retire him, you discard a card, you draw 1, and you banish delete one of their grade 1 or less rear guards. So something to hit back row. Just add more control. And he is free in a sense, but it's an okay card, not great. And then 2, Jigga. Jigga is Counterblast 1, kill something on your board, nuke a column. It's okay. I don't use him super often, but again, if I'm trying to do more of a board control, like I need to get rid of certain things, like a Promised Daughter column or something like that, then I guess he is useful, especially if, you go Opener of Dark Gates, grab a trigger, place a trigger down, place this card down, blow up that, and then blow up the column, things like that. So it could work out that way. But he's all right. I don't use him super often, again, because Counterblast and space is limited, but I use him when I generally need him. So for grade 2s, I got 4 10K vanillas. This card is actually one of my more favorite cards in the deck, and I'll explain why in a second. This is my favorite grade 2 in the deck. Guiley. Guiley is basically your turn 2 ride target and one of your better pressure cards. If he hits your opponent, so when you drop him, if you have more rear guards than your opponent, he gets an extra 4K. And if he hits an opponent's Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1 and either banish, delete a rear guard, and if they don't have any rear guards, you get to draw 1. So a lot of times on turn 2, you ride him, swing in, he hits, Soul Blast 1, draw a card. So we're getting, so he's a plus, so we're getting cards to hand. So I really like this card. He's a really good unit. He does use his soul, but he's one of the cards that you want to use soul for. 2 Evo. I don't like this card. I've used it once or twice, maybe just for a weird power game, maybe for like a push play. Turn 2 he can be 30K, but I don't really like this card. He's really just in here because the deleters don't really have much of anything else you could really run. And that spot is definitely still a flex. And then 2 copies of Given. Given for the win more type of play. Usually when you ride Greedhole has extra crit. Given, you send 6 cards from your field at the end of the battle that he attacked. You send 6 cards from your hand and or field to the drop zone and restand your Vanguard with -1 drive check. He's one of those. I'm gonna go all in and win more cards. I don't really like him because, if you don't win using his skill, then you're probably going to lose the next turn. And you can use him early game and then have more room to take damage. But in that retrospect, you're hoping to trigger out on damage, build your hand back up. I just personally don't think he's a great card, and I think that he's one of those cards where it's kind of like, go all in, throw a Hail Mary, hope for the best. Now, he does work sometimes, and the threat of Given is also something nice, so that's why we play him in the deck. So, there's that. Now, back to Geo. I really like Geo because Geo, he's a 10K interceptor, 10K vanilla. In this deck, since you're deleting your opponent's Vanguard, you're trying to hit intervals of 5K and 10K. And him being a 10K is a 15K guard, a 15K guard, to block him, just regularly on a deleted Vanguard. Otherwise, he's a 10K intercept, so your opponent's either going to throw an attack at him, or, he's going to be an extra 10K shield. And one thing I noticed with this deck is that playing the 2 brothers, the Elro and Alba, they didn't really work too well because, they both had to be on the field to actually do something. Elro only hit up to 14, and 14... 14 is not 15. 14 is just as good as 10. And, there was no real, difference for him unless, you're swinging for 24 on, a 12, on a 12K Vanguard, something like that, or a 4th Vanguard. So in that retrospect, he's okay. But then you have the other one who on hit, if counterblast 1 and banish delete something. I mean, I think you have enough control in this deck, and I like the fact that Geo just adds in an extra, that 10K shielding. The deck is aggressive enough. The deck has enough field control, and I feel like both of those cards, a lot of the time, especially if your opponent's getting rid of them, or you have to get rid of them, and you can't, or you're not drawing into all the pieces you need, and can't find ways to get them into the drop zone so that you can use the resources to get them out. They're vanilla a lot of time, and if I'm going to have a vanilla on the board, I'd rather have Geo there to do that 10K shield. Plus, Geo's a card you can also conserve in your hand as an added bonus for for shielding as well. So you can commit something like an Evo or another guy or whatever it is, keep him in hand just for more or less for surprise guarding situations. But that's what I like about him. Very good in testing. I was really glad when I actually put him in. I saw my defensive capabilities, increasing. Grade 3s, 4 Greyon, 4 Greedhole. Greyon is a trial deck card. You want to sit on him. You want him to be your first ride. On hit, you counterblast 2, delete your opponent's Vanguard. On hit, Soul Blast 1, banish, delete a rear guard. Greed Hole on ride, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, banish, delete a rear guard, and if you rode from a grade 3, he gains an extra crit. He also has the ability of your opponent cannot move their cards, so essentially you want to be blowing up their front row, and then and this works against Force Clans. You know, you're getting rid of their front row, you're sitting on him, and if they're struggling for rear guards, they want to conserve guard, they can't move their grade 1 boosters or anything, like a Morgana for Royal Paladins or whatever. They can't move that up to the front circles, you know, into those force markers, so it forces them to commit another card from hand. So that's decent in itself, but riding him first sets you back, you know, a turn or two. It's really bad if you ride him first. He doesn't offer you anything. You don't really get much of anything. Riding Greed Hole first is, you know, your best option. And this is one of those decks where you're kind of like, well, I want to ride him and you want to see multiple copies of him to keep riding to put on pressure, but you also want to see Greyon, because if you're done on him, then you want to be on Greyon, really. This deck is kind of weird with its grade 3s about what you want to be on and when, but, you know, starting off the game, be on Greyon, and then later in the game, get on Greed Hole. And sometimes, if you're not drawing into a lot of your grade 3s, but you have a Greyon and Greed Hole, sometimes you'll just sit on Greyon for an extra turn or two. Now, that could slow down the deck a little bit, but it's better than, you know, riding into him the very following turn, not killing them, then being stuck on him and trying to grab another grade 3 and not being able to delete your opponent's Vanguard. When you can sit in here, delete the Vanguard. Since he's an act ability as well, he also works a lot better. He also works a lot better with Drown, because you can just place Drown down, then delete, and then Drown will see it and go into Soul, whereas this guy, Drown needs to be on the field prior to that to ride to Soul and to do that. So all in all, the deck is kind of weird in the sense of what you want to see, but really, him first and him second, but you have to time him correctly, I feel, as well. But that's the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed it. My thoughts on the deck are that this deck is... I don't really like this deck, to be perfectly honest. I'm not a fan of Deletors. When it came to Link Jokers, and you guys know, especially for those who've been following the channel for, you know, a few years, I'm a Star Vader player. I'm a Chaos Breaker player at heart, and I miss that type of control element, really, that Chaos brought, that fun... You know, to me, it was a really fun type of control, dictating, you know, what your opponent does, the lock and whatnot. And I wasn't a big fan of Deletors, though I did play them. This version, the reason why I kind of don't like it in a way is the fact that, you know, you do have to keep rewriting. It feels a bit clunky at times. Though I've gotten better with the deck, it still feels a bit clunky. And it's not a bad deck. It's not, by any stretch of imagination, it's not a bad deck. I think it's a pretty decent deck. And you know, the deck does have a problem against Rush. You know, against decks that move a little bit faster. And it does have an issue, again, like I said, when it comes to guarding as well, but against decks that are able to, like, see their grade 3s and have more potent offensive turns than what you're able to put out, I think that's where this deck falters, that they don't really have a strong defense to defend against potent offensive pressure turns consistently turn after turn. And, you know, protect decks like OTT definitely are a bad matchup for this deck, because you can delete their Vanguard, but they have Searchers. They can manipulate the top card of their deck. They can get to their grade 3s, store them up, and then go from there. And they also have protect markers, so it kind of makes your Greed Hole turn a little less, you know, threatening. And given turn, you really have to time that correctly as well, because they do have the hand to block a restand. So, but that's been my experience with the deck. I don't think it's bad. I think it's okay. And one thing to notice, like, you notice the triggers. The triggers are, like, you know, these guys, the monks and stuff. And, you know, if you guys played, you know, Vanguard back in G, like, a lot of these triggers were really featured for Messiah stuff. And it's funny how in the anime, you know, Deletors are trying to get rid of Vanguard, and then they transition to Brand. And I'm skipping Brand, by the way, but they're transition to Brand, who, you know, it's not, you know, Ibuki. But then, you know, Messiahs are going to come out, and he's going to completely toss away the Deletors and trying to get rid of Vanguard. He's going to become the Messiah and, I guess, save it. Something, you know, of that sort. So, you know, I feel, you know, kind of slighted in a bit. Now, maybe, you know, Deletors will be getting more support when Link Jokers, you know, when Link Jokers next get their support wave, maybe just, you know, as a throw-in. But, you know, going based off of what we see in the anime, he's really just throwing away Deletors and going to go to Messiahs. And Messiahs actually look a lot better than where we're at with Deletors. And I'm going to definitely want to get my hands on them and play test them. I think I might have to, I got to re-download Area and, you know, test them on there. But that's my thoughts on the Link Jokers right now and Deletors, you know, in the future Messiahs. Thank you guys for watching. I ordered my last SP Algos, so Max Rarity Aquaforce deck profile, my final one before, what is it, before My Glorious Justice, whichever number that extra booster is. I think EB8 comes out, so hopefully that comes in between, I think that's gonna get here between like Friday, maybe Friday or Saturday, whatever it gets here. I'll slide it in the deck, get the deck profile done, and then yeah, that'll be the final one before you know, My Glorious Justice, and we get Glory Maelstrom and, you know, Coral Salt and all them. But that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all later. Aqualife baby, we out. Peace.